Here.
Francatelli,
Here.
Cleveland, Conwell, Griffin, Harrison, Johnson,
Here.
Bashir Jones, Joe Jones,
Here.
Casey,
Present.
McCormick,
Present.
Mooney,
Here.
Valencic, Santana, Slight, Zone.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Couple housekeeping items. We have fairly, just in terms of volume, it's one of our lighter agendas. The order we're going to go in, we're going to go finance, public works, and capital projects, and then we'll do our council pieces. We'll then, as we traditionally do, we will break for a period of time to get organized for the council meeting, and then we'll go right into the council meeting. So I'm going to begin with ordinance number 786, 2020. Councilmember Kelly, by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance on behalf of Cleveland Municipal Court to apply for, accept, and expend grants and gifts that become available from federal, state, and other entities, other public and private entities, to respond to and mitigate the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, including funds to reimburse the court for costs incurred as a result of COVID-19, and authorizing director to file and execute all agreements and documents necessary for these purposes. I saw, Frank, are you here on this piece?
Yes, Council President, I am. I'm representing Chief Dumas. We do have a modification to this. We need to amend it to authorize the clerk of courts also to apply and accept COVID emergency supplement funding program from the Ohio Office of Criminal Justice. It's about $115,000. You should receive the amendment here shortly.
Okay, so that would fall into the gifts and grants that become available from state entities. That wouldn't cover it?
They want to be a little bit more specific because this is coming from a specific office at the state. They wanted to identify the Office of Criminal Justice.
Okay. Let me see if I have the amendment in the legislation.
Yeah.
I do not have the amendment. Do you have an amendment to offer, Frank?
Yes. Yes. Law and Andre will be bringing it up to you, Council President. But we want to specifically say the clerk of courts can accept also.
Okay.
In the amendment itself, it just says other entities, municipal courts, but we wanted to include the clerk of courts also to be very specific.
Okay, so for this amendment, can you propose language, or is that coming later?
It's coming.
Okay.
It should be up there shortly with you.
Okay, so we can't really, we kind of need that because we'll need a motion to amend. So let me,
Andre,
is Andre with us?
yes. Andre, you want me to read it for you?
Yeah, I need to know what needs to be amended, then I need a motion and a second.
Okay. And this is what it says: authorizing the Director of Finance on behalf of the Clerk of Courts, municipal courts, to apply and accept 2020 COVID emergency supplement funding grant from the Ohio Office of Criminal Justice Service, and authorizing the director to implement the grant. And it also includes authorizing the Director of Finance on behalf of Cleveland Municipal Court and or the clerk of Cleveland Municipal Court to apply and accept, expend grants and gifts that become available.
Can I get a motion to accept that amendment?
So move. I make a motion to amend that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any objection or discussion, I should say? Discussion?
So do we know what the dollar amount is? Because the second part of that was any and all other grants to accept and expend. Do we know what the dollar amount is of this particular piece of legislation?
Council
Besides 115 for the clerk of courts.
Right. We're going to apply for other grants that become available, Councilman. All departments have been applying for certain grants. We have received them. And this just authorizes us to continue to do that.
So in the previous legislation for the CARES Act funding, we had a dollar amount.
Right, and this one we do not. We're just asking that we can apply a grant. So each one of them, I'm assuming we would come to council to accept.
Okay, so this is authorizing to apply, and then it'll come back for accept and expend?
Correct. No,
Okay, so the second part of what you read said accept and expend.
correct. Andre?
So that doesn't require it to come back then.
Right, it's
Apply, accept, spend.
right. Okay, Councilman, I apologize. To apply, accept, and expend grant funds, gifts that become available from federal and state or other public entities. It does not have a specific dollar amount other than the clerk of courts, which is $115,562.75 from the Office of Criminal Justice Service.
So the previous one was for millions of dollars, so I don't know what this next one would be for, but Mr. Chairman, wouldn't it be more prudent that we authorize to apply for, but for the expend that it come back?
If this were the city applying on behalf of the general fund, yes, but because it's on behalf of the courts, I'm okay with that, with the language as it is, because, you know, just the different branch of government and how they function. I'm okay because it's the courts and not our general fund.
So we're basically, so the concern is that they can just expend for however they deem appropriate without having to come back.
Yeah, however, if they are successful in applying for and in being awarded grants.
Yeah, that's the concern I would have. Okay.
Further questions, comments on 78620 as amended? Wait a minute. All right, I do not see, Council Mike Polensek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I wonder to Frank Battle and Terry, I wonder if we could get an update on all of the CARES Act funds that we received to date, and as it pertains to what it's been allocated for. I'm trying to understand. I've been trying to read as much as I can, but I'm trying to see the big picture. So as of today, could the administration supply that to all members with how those dollars have been allocated? I appreciate that. I'll make that request through the chair.
Yes, sir. No problem.
Right it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything further on 78620 as amended? Hearing no further comments, questions, ordinance number 78620 stands approved.
Mr. Chairman, please record me as a no.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Frank. We are now going to move to Public Works. Do we have somebody?
Mr. Chairman, I'm here for Public Works today.
Great. I have three ordinances. I'm going to begin with ordinance number 70120. Council members McCormick, Johnson, Kelly by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Public Works to renew lease agreement number CT 7001 LS 2015-14 with the Cleveland Browns Stadium Company LLC for the lease of limited access parking lot located on the south side of First Energy Stadium for a term of 1 year with 4 one-year options to renew exercisable by the Director of Public Works. This has been heard and recommended for approval by the Committee on Municipal Services and Properties. Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, so this is a very small parking lot that's under State Route 2 that has been leased to the Cleveland Browns since 2002. And this is only for media parking. So it's not for fans. It's not for other uses. It's only for the media to park there. And the current lease was entered into in 2014. And that ordinance required us to come back to council if we want to extend for another 5 years. The lease rate was set by an appraiser at that time for both the 2014 rate and then the renewal rate, which would kick in 2020. And it's for 2 exhibition games and 8 regular season games. And the appraised value is $15,000 per year. It's paid annually. And then they can petition the city for additional dates, which would be $600 per day for special events if we approve it. And the only change here from the last lease is that they're asking if they petition the Department of Public Works, if they could have operational uses like other staff members of the Browns to park there occasionally. Again, that's on a case-by-case basis. And instead of having a 5-year renewal term, as you said, it would be a 1 year each for 5 individual 1-year renewals. So we're seeking approval here, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
And you said this arrangement has been in place since 2002,
Yes, that's correct.
and the value of the lease was determined based on fair market value by an independent appraiser?
Yes, exactly. So when this was taken to the council in 2014, we had the appraiser set both the base rent as well as the new renewal rent rate.
Okay. Thank you. This has been heard and recommended for passage by Committee on Municipal Services and Properties. Chairman Johnson, do you have anything further on 70120?
No, I don't have anything further, Mr. Chairman. It's a good deal for the city. They have, there are only 12 or 13 spots there, and they've been using it judiciously since 2002.
Thank you. Councilman Mike Polensek.
Mr. Chairman, my question was, what was the dollar amount?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, it's an annual rent of $15,000. And if they have any individual special events that we approve, it's $600 per day.
Councilman, you good? Councilman Polensek? Okay.
Yes.
Any further question on ordinance number 70120? Hearing none, ordinance number 70120 stands approved. Ordinance number 73420, council members Kelly and McCormick. An emergency ordinance to authorize Director of Public Works to enter into a second amendment to the June 30th, 2016 Property Operations and Programming Agreement with the Group Plan Commission for Public Square to provide a restricted contribution to support the commission's maintenance obligations on Public Square. Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, so I apologize. I was not given a briefing for this, but I can tell you that, the Group Plan Commission is the organization responsible for maintenance of Public Square as well as the malls. And so this is an allocation. I believe this ordinance was put forward by City Council, and it would be for an allocation of funding to assist the Group Plan Commission with maintenance of Public Square.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm familiar with this ordinance, and that is correct. This was heard and recommended for passage by the Committee on Municipal Services and Properties. I was going to call on Chairman Johnson if he wants to add anything to 73420.
No, Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything to add except that this deal saves the city quite a bit of money. We were doing it ourselves before this came into effect, and they have been doing it very good. As if you walk down there, you'll see.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Public Square really is minus the Jersey barriers. You can see the beauty and the plants and everything and how it's maintained. So thank you, Chairman Johnson. I want to call on the local council person for this area, who is Carrie McCormick, on ordinance number 73420.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I agree with your comments, minus the Jersey barriers. It is a beautiful public square for everybody. And Mr. Chair, this is a part of our ongoing support for the downtown Cleveland, not only the downtown Cleveland neighborhood, but what I would characterize as everybody's front yard in Cleveland, and that is Cleveland Public Square. The square was, built with majority of private donations for the entire city of Cleveland to enjoy. And as a part of those initial conversations and negotiations, the city of Cleveland is committed to support the upkeep of the square. Chairman, I'd also like to note that as a part of the Special Improvement District renewal, which again is paid by private property owners, there is an allocation specifically supplementing this going to Public Square as well, which is an increase from the prior SID authorization. So, there's a lot of different folks that have skin in the game here to ensure that our public square is kept up and programmed and looking great for the entire community to enjoy. And so this is kind of our part as a city of contributing towards that work to make sure that Cleveland Public Square stays the vibrant place it is for many, many years to come. Chair, what's been great to see too is in addition to the entire region using the square, it's also become an important public space for our residents downtown. We've got, around 20,000 City of Cleveland residents in downtown Cleveland, and it's a really important public space for them to, walk their dogs or to do an exercise class or to, enjoy downtown Cleveland. So for a whole array of reasons, it's important that we support Public Square moving forward. And I fully support this legislation, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilman. And again, this is Public Square. This is our property to maintain. Questions, comments on 73420? Not seeing any hands. Ordinance number 73420 stands approved. Ordinance number 75920, Councilmembers Johnson, Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Public Works to execute deeds of easement granting to the East Ohio Gas Company doing business as Dominion Energy Ohio certain easement rights in property located at Shaker Boulevard and Warrensville Center Road in the city of Shaker Heights and declaring the easement rights granted are not needed for public use. Commissioner?
So, Mr. Chairman, this is part of Dominion's Pipeline Infrastructure Replacement Program, which is to replace more than 5,500 miles of natural gas pipeline over a 25-year period. And this particular project is outside of the city of Cleveland, on city of Cleveland owned land that's in Shaker Heights. This land is leased to the Shaker Heights as part of the Shaker Lake Park lease that we have with them. And essentially what's happening is there's a pipeline that goes on Warrensville Center Road, the bridge that goes over the RTA railroad tracks. And there's not enough room to replace that pipeline on the bridge. So Dominion is seeking to take it down the hillsides under the RTA rapid tracks and then back up to where Warrensville would be at grade. And so to do this, they need an easement from the city, as well as Shaker Heights and RTA, all of which are in approval. The piece on city property, though, is 20 feet wide, and it was appraised at $9,350, and that's the appraised value and would be our sale price.
Thank you. And ordinance number 75920 has also been heard and recommended for approval by Committee on Municipal Services and Property. Chairman Ken Johnson, do you have anything to add to what the commissioner said? Or any questions?
No, he explained it very well, Mr. Chairman. I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. And since there is no local council person to go to in this one, are there any further questions, comments on ordinance number 75920? Seeing no hands, ordinance number 75920 stands approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you.
We are going to move to capital projects at this time. And I'm looking at the screen. Who is here for capital projects? There we go. Director Sprons.
Morning,
Rick, how you doing?
Council President.
All right. Okay, I am going to begin with ordinance number 67720, council members McCormick, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance giving the consent of the city of Cleveland to the county of Cuyahoga for the replacement of the Jefferson Avenue Bridge between West 3rd Street and the Cuyahoga River, authorizing Director of Capital Projects to enter into agreements and apply for and accept an allocation of county motor vehicle license tax fees. Director? Anybody?
Yeah, Council President, this is Director Sprons. Yeah, the county will arrange for the preparation of construction plans and specification, including engineering reports for the supervision and administration of construction costs and contribute 100% of all eligible costs. The bridge improvements include cast in place concrete piles, new concrete abutments and trusses, and a new concrete bridge deck. The estimated cost for the project is $4.4 million. And again, is 100% county funded through the motor vehicle licensed tax fund. The design of the project is underway. It will be finished in March of 2021. And the construction is scheduled to complete or start in April 2021 and be complete by October of 2021.
Thank you. You answered my question when you said 100% county funded. This has been heard and recommended for passage by the Committees on Municipal Services and Properties and Committee on Development, Planning, and Sustainability. Chairman Ken Johnson, do you have anything further on ordinance number 67720?
No, Mr. Chairman, good deal for the city. Doesn't cost us anything.
Great, thank you. Chairman Brancatelli, anything further on 67720?
Any further, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. The local council person, Carrie McCormick, anything on 67720?
County paying for a new bridge in the city. Move for approval, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair.
Any further, it's as simple as that, as far as I can see. Any further questions, comments on 67720? Seeing no hands, ordinance number 67720 stands approved. Ordinance number 69420. Councilmembers McCormick, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance to vacate a portion of West 37th Place and West 36th Place.
Yes, Council President. West 37th Place and West 36th Place abuts the old Tinnerman Steel Range Company building. West 37th Place was originally proposed to be vacated in 1997, but was never fully vacated. Since then, the abutting property owners had been occupying the alley with fencing, landscaping, and other structural encroachments. To meet the tax credit requirements for the building renovations, they're required to have clear and access to the windows and to that face of the building. Therefore, the Donald Group is seeking the vacation of West 37th Place, which will be split between all abutting property owners, extending the yards and securing the alley for both the existing residents, the proposed development, and compliance for all abutters with the. We do have consent from Councilman McCormick.
Thank you. This has been heard and recommended for passage by both the Committee on Municipal Services and Properties, Development, Planning, and Sustainability. I'm going to skip calling on the chairs for these vacation pieces and go right to the local council person. Councilman Carrie McCormick.
Again, Mr. Chair, this has been thoroughly heard through our committee process and city council, and I fully support this vacation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments on ordinance number 69420? Hearing none, ordinance number 69420 stands approved. Ordinance number 69520, Councilmembers Mooney, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly, an emergency ordinance to vacate a portion of the first unnamed alley 10 feet wide of West Bel Air Road and north of Guardian Boulevard. Director, do you have any brief comments on this?
This is just a vacation to allow the property owner to begin to grow a garden there and for his own fruits and vegetables, and then to sell those healthy vegetables to others. We do have consent from Councilman Mooney for this.
Great. And again, this has been heard and recommended for passage by both the Committee on Municipal Services and Properties, Committee on Development, Planning, and Sustainability. I will skip the chairs and direct to the local council person, who is Brian Mooney. Councilman?
I just moved to support this. This is an old alleyway that's torn out long ago. It's just a little 10-foot section of grass.
Thank you. Anything further on 69520? Hearing nothing, ordinance number 69520 stands approved. Ordinance number 69620, council members McCormick, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to vacate a portion of Keene Court Southwest at West 31st Place.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Councilman.
Go ahead, Director. Tell us about this one.
All right, St. Ignatius High School has recently completed construction of the athletic center that borders West 31st Street and Chapman Avenue. Keene Court and West 31st Street would be closed to vehicle access, remaining only as a pedestrian way. This will allow for the students and the residents of that area to walk in that space. We do have consent from Councilman McCormick for this vacation.
Okay, and I will withhold all St. Ignatius comments since St. Ed's lost to Medina, and I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut. Councilman Carrie McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you're aware, I went to a school on the east side, Bill Angel St. Joseph Mighty Vikings. So I don't necessarily have a dog in that fight, but I will say that I represent St. Ignatius, so I'll go with them. Chairman, this This is the vacation in the middle of the St. Ignatius campus, surrounding their brand new, athletic center, which they worked really hard with the community to ensure that the athletic center fit in with the neighborhood, as well as the renovation of Kyle Fields, which they again worked with the neighborhood, and that field is now open to the public. So you see a lot of community groups using it. So the high schools made a big effort to, open up their doors to the community. And so this vacation, it simply makes sense for the functionality of the campus. Ignatius has been a great community partner. So I would just move for approval on this and ask that my colleagues support this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any further questions? 69620. Hearing on ordinance number 69620 stands approved. Ordinance number 73120. Councilmember Zone, Johnson, Bryan, County, Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Capital Projects and/or City Planning to enter into one or more contracts with Stephen Gutierrez for professional services necessary for the design, production, and installation of a yet-to-be-designed public artwork associated with and installed at the new Cleveland Kennel.
Yes, Council President, the artist Stephen Gutierrez was selected by the Public Art Committee and approved by the City Planning Commission based on qualifications, with the understanding that he would develop a public art concept for the newly built city kennel. The final design will receive approval from the City Planning Commission and prior to its being constructed. We have an existing $58,147 funds from the original project appropriate for this already. The design will take 4 months, construction will take 6 months.
Outstanding. That sounds great. This has been heard and recommended for passage by the Committees on Municipal Services and Properties and Development, Planning and Sustainability. Chairman Ken Johnson, do you have anything further on 731?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. Councilman Chairman Brancatelli, do you have anything further on 731?
Nothing further.
Thank you. Want to go to our local council person and arts enthusiast, Councilman Matt Zone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to acknowledge Tara Petrus, who's our arts coordinator for the city of Cleveland. Tara, give everyone a wave. I see you on the call.
Tara, how you doing?
This process, actually, we had selected an artist over a year ago. Things didn't work out. We had to go through the procurement process of doing another. It was a very laborious effort. I want to acknowledge Tara's amazing stewardship of this project, and I'd ask my colleagues to support this piece of legislation.
Thank you, Councilman Zone. Anything further on 73120? Hearing nothing, seeing no hands up, ordinance number 73120 stands approved. These are all done, and I'm just going to count. Okay, now we're just going to go, we have a few remaining pieces from Cleveland City Council. So thank you all. These are ordinance number 81520 is recommended for passage under suspension by Councilwoman Cleveland. Ordinance number 81520 by Councilmember Cleveland, an emergency ordinance designated East 82nd Street between Kinsman and Ridolph Farm with the secondary and honorary designation of Damien Forche Way. Any objection? This has been through the process that we've put forward.
I just want to say something if I can, Mr. President.
Please.
Even though that's not my area, I want to say thank you to Councilwoman Cleveland for honoring Damien. This brother was a phenomenal man who dedicated himself to this mission of healthy eating. And, my goal was while just some months before he transitioned, the goal was to bring him and his group to do a second part in Ward 7. And we were meeting almost every day. I love him dearly. And I just want to say thank you to the Councilwoman Cleveland for honoring him in that way. He deserves that. Thank you, Councilwoman Cleveland, and thank you to City Council for that.
Right. Thank you very much, Councilman Jones. Councilwoman Cleveland has requested an excused absence. Just so you know, she's representing us at the funeral of Pernell Jones Sr. Councilman Blaine Griffin.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I too want to make sure that I acknowledge and thank Councilwoman Cleveland for making that happen. Damien Forche and the Ridolph family really were pioneers in the city of Cleveland with the urban agriculture movement. They meant so much more than just that street. They meant so much more to this community, and really being innovative and really, really helping a lot of people look at urban agriculture in a different lens. So Damien is definitely deserving of that honor. He, as Councilman Jones said, he was a great man. He worked with all of us throughout the years. And I truly am happy that Councilwoman Cleveland decided to rename that street in that area after him, because he truly deserves it. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Griffin. Councilman Kevin Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sentiment about Damien. Although I only met him and known him for a short period of time, he touched my life and he touched many people's lives around him. So I want to thank Councilwoman Cleveland for bringing this honor to her neighborhood and honoring Damien.
Thank you, Councilman Bishop. Councilman Joe Jones.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with all of what my colleagues have said about Damon Forche. I grew up with him, and he was an outstanding human being, even when we went to school together. And I'm just so proud of his accomplishments and how he has transformed that entire area in that community. And they're still, in his memory, still moving forward down there. And they need a lot of assistance and help, but they have actually transformed a blighted area and community and has turned it into an oasis garden. And they even have animals down there and chickens. And so it's just really exciting to see that they have done such an outstanding job down there in that area, in that community. So again, to him and all of those who do that work, may God continue to bless you and shine favor upon your head.
Thank you, Councilman. If there's nothing further, ordinance number 81520 will be considered by the full council later this morning. We have, again, a request under suspension, ordinance number 83220, council members Brancatelli, Kelly, and McCormick, an emergency ordinance to amend section 1 of ordinance number 46120 passed June 30th, 2020, in order to extend the expiration date of the temporary expansion area for from November 1, 2020 until June 1, 2021 for the continued use of private parking lots, street, and other public right-of-way, including on-street parking areas and parklets as outdoor restaurants. If you recall, we did this in June to provide more table space for restaurants. As the winter comes, this will expire in November, and there are restaurants that have come up with different ideas to have outdoor heating and igloos and have socially distant, safe experience at restaurants. So that is, we are extending, the intent of this ordinance is to extend this. I want to call on the sponsors, and I see Councilman Zonin Plensik. Let me give Councilman Tony Brancatelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fully support this legislation. Critically important to help deal with the issues that we're facing with our restaurants and distancing and being able to survive, and also actually providing a lot of vitality on our streets. So fully support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Chair. This is, again, the piece that we passed in May. The amendment today is simply amending the date to extend this policy. This current policy expires on November 1st, so in a week or so. So this is an effort to push it out for restaurants and businesses across the city of Cleveland during the pandemic. Chair, I'd also note that, and I know there are internal conversations with council and the mayor's administration, but that we provide an all hands on deck, both from a permitting, from inspection purposes, to ensure that if restaurants want to look at things like the greenhouses or igloos, that the city is on board to quickly provide support for those types of activities so that we can support our local restaurants. So I just want to make sure that in addition to this piece, Chair, and I know that you're committed to it, and Tony and everybody else, but that we're really thinking how we quickly can act to support these restaurants and that it doesn't turn into a 3-month permitting process. So after this piece, I'd like to continue the conversation of how we can really create a all hands on deck system at the city of Cleveland to turn around whatever we need to do to support these restaurants. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Matt Zone. And Councilman Zone, were you an original sponsor?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about just an oversight. We just had to rush to get this through. So please forgive us on the sponsorship issue.
Not a problem. No, it's important and needed, and I support all the other comments that have been previously made. Question as to why we are sunsetting it in June of 21. Let's be real. We're not going to be out of the pandemic by June of 21, and it's going to get a lot worse than it is better right now. So I know we would have time in the spring to probably amend that ordinance based on what's happening with health matters, but small businesses are scared. I just had Banter, which was a well-established business, closed down because of COVID. I've had a number of other small businesses close down because of it, and businesses are hurting. So if somebody from the administration or the sponsors could reply to the sunset date of June of 21, I'd appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, can I?
Yes.
Thank you. Chair, I was the member who put forth that amendment. The thought process originally was to immediately allow the legislation to get through the winter and spring. But Chair, at your discretion, I would be more than open to looking at, a sunset of, I don't know, whenever. So I'm more than open to that.
Mr. Chairman, what I would recommend, because the legislative body always has the ability to reconvene and amend legislation that's in effect, I would keep this ordinance in place till November 1 of 2021. And if for some reason we determine that there needs to be modifications to this ordinance based on the current guidelines from the CDC and the Ohio Department of Health, as well as our own health department, then the legislation could be amended. I would not want to see us scrambling last minute to extend an arbitrary date based on science that we don't even know what it's going to be. I think the safer bet would be, let's get to the fall of next year when the weather gets cold again. Hopefully a vaccine will be in place. So Mr. Chairman, if there's no objections from the sponsor, I would make a motion to amend the ordinance to include a sunset date of November 1, 2021.
I would second that.
I would second that. As the
Okay, so the amendment is to change the language of ordinance number 83220, and it would read, to amend section 1 of ordinance number 461, 2020, passed June 3rd, 2020, in order to extend the expiration date of the temporary expansion area program from November 1, 2020 until November 1, 2021 for the continued use of private parking lots, streets, and other public rights of way, including on-street parking areas and parklets as outdoor restaurants. We've had a motion, we've had several seconds. There are hands to discuss the piece in general. If I can call for questions on the amendment first, we can get the amendment out of the way, then we'll go back to general conversation. So Councilman Polensek and Griffin, are your questions on the amendment or in general?
I'm fine with the amendment. I'm fine with the amendment.
Is there any objection to the amendment? Okay, so ordinance number, the amendment passes without objection to, thank you, Councilman Zone, to ordinance number 83220 to November 1st. With that, I'm going to go back to the list then. Questions, comments on ordinance number 83220 as amended, Councilman Mike Polensek.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Now we can't though.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I wholeheartedly.
Again.
Hear me now? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wholeheartedly support the piece of legislation and the amendment. As Matt indicated, we are starting to see the real dominoes starting to fall in our neighborhoods of restaurants and food service businesses. I personally believe that the internal restrictions are too severe as it pertains to the operation of businesses like this 10 o'clock, this arbitrary 10 o'clock shutoff for sales of alcohol. And I hope it's something that we internally can start discussing more with the administration, because obviously the administration puts in effect guidelines. And to my knowledge, because certainly I haven't been involved in them, there's no internal discussion with the majority of us on the implications and the effect of these guidelines on our local businesses. With Sokolowski's University Inn going out, that should be a shockwave for all of us. They were there almost 100 years. And I have businesses in my own neighborhood that are on the brink. They are, if there's not a second stimulus package coming down the pike, we could see many of our commercial strips become wastelands where we have present businesses, carry-out businesses, restaurants, etc. So I'm greatly concerned. The question I want to pose, and I don't know if anyone who's from the administration, are we able to obtain a list of who has applied? Do we know who has applied? Which establishments have applied for the outside extensions?
I don't have a list, but I have gone to many of them. I don't have that list. We can get that, but I know that those that have.
If they could provide that to us by ward, I'd like to see it, because there's some obviously that are just doing it on their own without getting the proper approval. And I've indicated them, by all means, you know, go through the process. I mean, let's make sure that we pass this legislation for a reason. You need to apply properly so you can do your outside venue or your parking lot venue. But I'd like to see that list per ward if I can, Mr. Chairman. And then also at some point, I hope we can have some better discussion with the administration as it pertains to the restrictions that have been placed upon food outlets. I just think, again, my own personal opinion, I believe they're too severe. People are social distancing, if they're wearing masks, if the operators are doing what they're supposed to be doing, then by all means, we need to be doing everything we can to assist them. Because I don't even want to think about Thanksgiving, December, Christmas time. What's going to happen to these businesses? I mean, they are all on the verge, and we can't lose sight of that fact. They need help, and we've got to do everything we can to assist them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Blaine Griffin.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. First of all, could you please add me as a sponsor? I really would like to be a sponsor with that ordinance. First and foremost. Second thing that I really, I'm glad that Councilman Zone put forth that extended timeline. A lot of people are struggling because you got to keep in mind, a lot of folks did not have the festivals and some of their big cash cow events that they usually have. So we need to do whatever we can to really help these struggling restaurants. I think is one of the most critical pieces of legislation that this council has passed. Two things that I would recommend to follow along the line of questioning with my colleague, Mike Polisic. The approval process really needs to make sure that it's tightened, because at one point in time, one restaurant had these big, ugly Jersey barriers that they put up that was not conducive to the aesthetics of the streets. And the other restaurant owners were really upset about that. And they did not go through, at least any council person, they did not go through me. So I'm not sure how that process goes. And we really need to make sure that we look closely at how that approval process takes place. Number two, I really think I would encourage the administration on what kind of guidelines that they have for these outdoor patios. Now that it's a little bit more crisp outside, some of them are using these lights, these lamps, and some of them are being cited and actually being told that they have to take them down, which defeats the purpose of having to put an outdoor patio when it's approximately 50 or 60 degrees outside and you have these heat lamps that have some kind of flame. So I really would look for guidance and make sure that the administration, that we don't counter our own efforts by telling people they can do this outdoor extension, and then they get cited because they try to put up something to keep their clientele warm. So just if they can keep that in mind as we move forward, but I strongly support and approve this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Bashir Jones.
Thank you so much, Chair. Please also add me as a sponsor on this as well. I have so many restaurants in my neighborhood. I just recently visited a restaurant just the other day. You have this Salvadorian couple, and who are really struggling, man. Who are really struggling right now. I have a lot of restaurants in my area. And Chair, I would also add, not only in asking to be a co-sponsor on this, but we have to do a better job in how we are communicating with our residents. I've been talking about it a lot, and I'm just not seeing a change. We have to get someone signing on TV 20. Somebody should be signing these meetings that we're having. I have a huge number of hearing and seeing impaired, so signing and closed caption, in my neighborhood. I have a lot of restaurants who they speak Spanish. They different dialects of Spanish. They speak different dialects of Chinese. So there's city resources that's available that they are unintentionally excluded from because no one is speaking their language, and they're feeling like the process is much more cumbersome than helpful. So I once again I'm very supportive of this, but I just would add, just for the administration, that we have to do a better job of speaking to those who are hearing and seeing impaired, different dialects of Chinese, different dialects of Arabic, different dialects of Spanish, even some different dialects in English. We have to make sure that we're reaching all of our residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to thank Councilman Zone for proposing the amendment. I was informed that there is an issue with the amendment, not so much that but in terms of getting it done under suspension today for notice and procedure of what we would have to do to craft the amendment. I am asking we can pass it as is today and then pass it for November in 2 weeks and have the same effect. But I think because we're passing under suspension and this hasn't received any of it was posted on the council calendar, but this would be, so is there an objection to that, or do we want to move forward? I'm suggesting that we, as much as I 1,000% support Councilman Zone's amendment, I'm suggesting we could pass it today as is and then go to November in 2 weeks.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think as Councilman Zone noted, we can amend legislation. So without having to have a concern about the legislation we passed today, it's up to Councilman Zone who proposed, but we can come back.
Mr. Chairman, I would withdraw my amendment if there isn't any objection from our colleagues, with the understanding that a new ordinance will be introduced and passed under suspension within 2 weeks, extending the date to November 1st, 2021.
I'm very committed to that, as I think all of our colleagues are. Is there any objection to the withdrawal of the amendment?
So, Mr. Chairman, just on that, I'm just curious. So is the concern that, so obviously council has the right to amend an ordinance in a committee hearing. So is the opinion that even though there was notice of the ordinance being heard, there wasn't notice of the amendment? Or I'm a little confused on that.
Yes, and what the clerk staff would do to have to prepare this and do the notifications within City Hall.
Okay.
Well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm fully committed to the amendment. I think it was a very good catch, good find by Councilman Zone. But for procedural purposes only, we're going to pass, or we are going to consider ordinance number 83220 in its current form with the commitment that in 2 weeks, we will amend our amendment to make it November 1st of 2021. Is
Mr.
everybody
Chairman,
good with
procedure. I think since I'm going to withdraw my amendment, I don't know, does it need to be seconded and do we need to vote on withdrawing it? Or can the maker of the motion just withdraw?
I don't think so, but let's just be thorough. Can we have a second on Councilman Zone's withdrawal?
A second.
Any objection? Okay, thank you. Thank you. No, this is a great discussion, it's a very important piece. So thank you all very much. Moving now to resolution 83320. Council members Kelly, McCormick, and Harrison, and I know that there's a lot of other people that want to be sponsors of this. This is an emergency ordinance supporting issue 68, a tax property renewal and increase to support the Cleveland Municipal School District. If you could let the clerk, myself know if you would like to be a sponsor of this, and then I want to have discussion of this, because I know Councilman Griffin should have been a sponsor as well. I know there's a bunch of people, so we will get this amended in time. Is there, other than changing the sponsorship and getting people listed as sponsors, is there any questions, comments on the substance or the intent of 83320? Okay, actually, if we, well, I don't know if this will work. If everybody could raise their hand who would like to be a sponsor. Like on the screen maybe, like just so the clerk can see it. So Matt Zone, Bashir Jones, Kerry McCormick, Councilman Brancatelli, Ken Johnson, Mike Lenzik. I think we already have Matt on there. Kerry, Brian Mooney, Blaine, Matt. Okay. Councilman Kevin Conwell. Great. Okay, thank you all very much. Resolution 83320 will be considered by the full council later this morning. Resolution 82720 by Councilmember Johnson, emergency resolution supporting the joint application submitted by the Natural Areas Land Conservancy and Burton Bell Car Development, Inc. to the Clean Ohio Green Space Conservation Program for the purchase and improvement of 8 parcels comprising the Garden of 11 Angels Memorial Site in the city of Cleveland. Councilman Johnson.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we've been working on this since that disaster on Imperial, and the families have finally agreed, and we're submitting this so that we can have a final solution to the parcels that are there to represent the 11 women that died.
Okay, thank you. Is there any objection to resolution 82720? There's no questions, objections, further comments. Resolution 82720 will be considered by the full council later this morning. And the last one is resolution 82620. Councilmember Kelly, an emergency resolution fixing the date of the next regular council meeting. I don't assume there's any objection to that, because we do have to have the council meetings. That is all that I have. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Seeing no hands up, we will all reconvene at 11:15. Again, if you could keep your screen on, you can turn your microphone and your video off, but stay connected. And then if everybody could sign back on at 11:15 for the full council meeting. Thank you so much.
so I will give her maybe those.
1 o'clock is fine.
Are we done yet?
Almost. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need 4 more. 6.
Okay, great. You too. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Kevin, are we live on TV 20 now?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
So call me.
Says we're live on YouTube though.
Yeah, we're live on YouTube. However, TV 20 is having some spectrum difficulties again today. So they are taping us though, but yay, spectrum.
At some point in time, we need to have a serious conversation, Mr. Chair of Utilities, about Spectrum. We need to bring them to the table one day. This is getting outrageous.
I won't disagree with that. And we have been working, especially with these poles that are going up too, as well, with AT&T and the 5G and everything, just dropping them everywhere. That's very big on the state level, where we have no say so over where they're putting their poles or their 5Gs or anything like that. But we can definitely bring Spectrum to the table. I know Brancatelli's a big fan of Spectrum with his cable as well. He's always
My cable, it rarely go out.
Yeah.
Director King.
In 2007, Brian, in 2007, there was a Senate Bill 5, which stripped away all local authority from municipalities.
Right.
Well, Director Casey, I'm glad you brought that up because, Chairman Casey, sorry about that. Because my residents have been talking to me about these 5G poles and they're telling people that they're telling people your councilman is the one that put that, said to put that there. So
Yeah, we have no say so in where they put the poles.
No.
Can they be
although it does have to go through planning, but they just sign off on them.
Can we do a hearing on that?
Sure, absolutely.
Their government affairs person, Chris Thompson, is a pretty decent guy, Brian. I think he would be receptive, get the right people from his team to join you.
The moral of the story is everybody should use Old Brooklyn Connected. But since that might not happen, well,
Yeah, we ain't got council president money.
that's it. Sure you do. But anyhow,
We'll look at bringing Spectrum to the table.
we call to order our council meeting Wednesday, October 21, 2021. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Kelly.
Here.
Excuse me, Bishop.
Here.
Brancatelli. Cleveland. Conwell.
Here.
Griffin.
Here.
Hairston.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Bashir Jones.
Here.
Joe Jones. Casey.
Present.
McCormack.
Present.
Mooney. Kalinsik. Santana. Slight. Zone.
Present.
You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. If everybody could please pause for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
Okay, this council meeting is being held during the COVID-19 emergency declaration and is being conducted as a virtual meeting in accordance with Ohio's open meeting laws as amended by Sub-House Bill 197, Council Rule 49 requiring attendance of the mayor and the directors of all departments at council meetings is waived for this and any other virtual council meetings held under amended Sub-House Bill 197. In compliance with the charter and the rules of council, a copy of all legislation to be heard during this council meeting was furnished previous to the meeting to every council member through their council email. It is hereby acknowledged without objection that all council members have received this legislation. Further, council members must be visibly present for votes to be counted. If you are not present, your vote will not be counted. Madam Clerk, please dispense with the journal.
By Councilmember Bishop, that the reading of the minutes of the last meeting be dispensed with the journal approved, seconded by Councilmember Griffin.
Communications.
File number 808-2020, oath of office from David Gation, board member, Civilian Police Review Board. File number 809-2020 from Director Carrie Howard, Department of Public Safety, notice of gift acceptance of $5,000 from the Hartford for fire safety education. A plat at file number 807-2020, dedication plat for Allen Estates subdivision, East 65th Street between Wade Park and Linwood, Ward 7.
First reading emergency ordinances to be referred for administrative and committee review.
Ordinance 810-2020 by council members Casey and Kelly by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Utilities to enter into an amendment to contract with CHN Housing Partners to provide services under a water crisis assistance program. Ordinance 811-2020 by Councilmember Kelly by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to amend the title in section 1 of Ordinance 387-2019 relating to professional services to develop and provide programs and activities for youth and their families, and to authorize amendments to agreements currently entered into under that ordinance. Ordinance 812-2020 by Council members Johnson and Kelly by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Works to apply for and accept a grant from the Ohio Department of Education for the 2021 Summer Food Service Program, authorizing the purchase by requirement contract of breakfast and lunch and/or food products, beverages, condiments, and paper products to implement the grant for the Division of Recreation, Department of Public Works, and authorizing the director to contract with various nonprofit organizations for the implementation of the program. Ordinance 813-2020 by Councilmember Kelly, an emergency ordinance determining the bid of Brothers Printing Company for typesetting and printing and personalized letterhead, envelopes, business cards, notepads, phone cards, postcards, calendars, newsletters, brochures, flyers, magnets, posters, banners, and booklets, and for delivery of the same to Cleveland City Council is the lowest and best bid, authorizing the clerk to enter into a written requirement contract with Brothers Printing. Ordinance 814-2020 by council members McCormack, Santana, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance giving consent of the city of Cleveland to the Director of Transportation of the state of Ohio for rehabilitating the Scranton Road Bridge, authorizing the Director of Capital Projects to enter into any relative agreements and causing a payment of the city's share to the state for the cost of the improvement. Ordinance 816-2020 by council members Brancatelli, Griffin, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance to supplement the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio by enacting a new section 347.20 relating to small box discount retail stores. Ordinance 817-2020 by council members Griffin, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the mayor and commissioner purchases and supplies to acquire and reconvey properties presently owned by Fairmount Properties or its designee located at East 105th and Cedar for the purpose of entering into the chain of title prior to the adoption of tax increment financing legislation authorized under the revised code. Ordinance 818-2020 by Councilmember Kelly, an emergency ordinance authorizing the clerk of council to enter into a First Amendment to the agreement with Granicus for the purchase of additional software subscriptions and services for an integrated legislative management system for Cleveland City Council. Ordinance 819-2020 by council members Griffin, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Economic Development to apply for and accept an empowerment zone or non-empowerment zone HUD H-108 loan or loans from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to partially finance the construction of the mixed-use grocery store project located at East 105th and Cedar, and authorizing the director to enter into one or more contracts with Fairmount Properties or its designee. Ordinance 820-2020 by council members Casey and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Utilities to enter into an agreement with the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District for the treatment and disposal of water plant sludge generated at the Morgan, Baldwin, and Nottingham water treatment plants for the Division of Water. Ordinance 821-2020 by council members McCormack, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Works to enter into a license agreement with the Convention and Visitors Bureau of Greater Cleveland to use and occupy city-owned property and ongoing maintenance of a pedestrian wayfinding sign at the Lakefront Municipal Parking Lot for an initial term of 3 years and automatically renewing year to year unless terminated by either party. Ordinance 822-2020 by council members Bashir Jones, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Capital Projects to enter into one or more multi-party agreements regarding the East 66th Street roadway improvement project, authorizing one or more contracts with Osborne Engineering for professional design services, authorizing the Commissioner of Purchases and Supplies to acquire real property and easements, applying for and accepting a grant from the Cleveland Foundation and other grants and gifts from any entities, and authorizing other agreements for the project. Ordinance 823-2020 by council members Griffin, Johnson, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Works to enter into a license agreement with the Italian American Brotherhood Club or its designee to design, build, install, and maintain a statue of Rocco Domenico Calavito Jr. on city-owned property in Tony Brush Park for an initial term of 3 years and automatically renewing year to year unless terminated by either party. Ordinance 824-2020 by council members Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance giving consent of the city of Cleveland to the Director of Transportation of the State of Ohio to construct improvements at various intersections in the city under their pedestrian safety improvement project and authorizing agreements. Ordinance 825-2020 by council members Johnson and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Works and of Finance to employ one or more temporary employment agencies to provide professional services to supply temporary and seasonal personnel for the Department of Public Works and Project Clean Program and for various other departments of the city for a period up to 1 year. Ordinance 835-2020 by council members Brancatelli and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Economic Development to enter into a grant agreement with the Greater Cleveland Sports Commission or its designee to provide financial assistance to organize and administer programs for marketing the city of Cleveland as a venue for sporting events and to actively market the public auditorium as a premier site for the hosting of major events.
First reading emergency ordinances to be passed.
Ordinance 815-2020 by Councilmember Cleveland, an emergency ordinance designating East 82nd Street between Kinsman Avenue and Ridall Farm with a secondary and honorary designation of Damien Fortier Way. Ordinance 829-2020 by Councilmember Santana, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of the Department of Aging to enter into agreement with the Near West Side Multi-Service Corporation, DBA May Dugan Center, for the Refugee Social Service Support Program through the use of Ward 14 casino revenue funds. Ordinance 830-2020 by Councilmember Griffin, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Department of Community Development to enter into an agreement with Fairfax Renaissance Development Corporation for the holiday food program through the use of Ward 6 casino revenue funds. Ordinance 832-2020 by council members Brancatelli, Griffin, Bashir Jones, Kelly, and McCormack. An emergency ordinance to amend section 1 of ordinance 461-2020 in order to expend the expiration date of the temporary expansion area program from November 1st, 2020 until June 1st, 2021 for the continued use of private parking lots, streets, and other public rights of way, including on-street parking areas and parklets as outdoor restaurants.
Read the motion to suspend the rules.
By Councilmember Bishop, that the rules be suspended and the legislation just read be placed on final passage. Seconded by Councilmember Griffin.
Please call the roll.
Kelly, Bishop, Brancatelli, Cleveland, Conwell, Griffin, Hairston, Johnson, Bashir Jones, Joe Jones, Casey, McCormack, Mooney, Polensek, Santana, Slight Zone. 13 yeas.
Please call the roll on passage.
Kelly, Bishop, Brancatelli, Cleveland, Conwell, Griffin, Hairston, Johnson, Bashir Jones, Joe Jones, Casey, McCormack, Mooney, Polensek, Santana, Slight Zone. 13 yeas.
Thank you. First reading resolutions referred for administrative and committee review.
Resolution 831-2020 by council members Kelly, Johnson, and Brancatelli by departmental request. An emergency resolution declaring the intent to vacate a portion of Muriel Court Southwest.
First reading emergency resolutions to be adopted.
Resolution 826-2020 by Councilmember Kelly, an emergency resolution fixing the date of the next regular meeting of council, November 4th, 2020. Resolution 827-2020 by Councilmember Johnson, an emergency resolution supporting the joint application submitted by the Natural Areas Land Conservancy and Burtonville Car Development to the Clean Ohio Green Space Conservation Program for the purchase and improvement of the 8 parcels comprising the Garden of 11 Angels Memorial Site in the city of Cleveland. Resolution 828-2020 by Councilmember Joe Jones, an emergency resolution withdrawing objection to the liquor agency contract located at 4127 East 131st Street and repealing resolution 770-2020. Resolution 833, 2020, by council members Kelly, B. Jones, Brancatelli, Johnson, Polensek, Mooney, Griffin, Conwell, Bishop, McCormack, Hairston, and Cleveland. An emergency resolution supporting issue 68, a tax property renewal and increase to support the Cleveland Municipal School District. Resolution 834, 2020, by Councilmember Brancatelli, an emergency resolution declaring the intent to designate the building and property known as the Fullerton School as a Cleveland landmark.
Read the motion to suspend the rules.
By Councilmember Bishop, that the rules be suspended and the legislation just read be placed on final passage, seconded by Councilmember Griffin.
Please call the roll.
Kelly, Bishop, Brancatelli, Cleveland, Conwell, Griffin, Hairston, Johnson, Bashir Jones, Joe Jones, Casey, McCormack, Mooney, Polensek, Santana, Slife, Zone. 12 yeas.
Before I call the roll on adoption, there's a hand up, Councilman Brian Casey.
Mr. President, please mark me a no on 833. Thank you.
Thank you. Please call the roll on adoption.
Kelly, Bishop, Brancatelli, Cleveland, Conwell, Griffin, Hairston, Johnson, Bashir Jones, Joe Jones, Casey, McCormack, Mooney, Polensek, Santana, Slife, Zone. On resolutions 827, 2020, 12 yeas, no nays, 1 recusal. On resolution 833, 2020, 12 yeas, 1 nay. On all others, 12 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Second reading emergency ordinances to be passed.
Ordinance 677, 2020, by council members McCormack, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly, by departmental request. An emergency ordinance giving consent of the city of Cleveland to the county of Cuyahoga for the replacement of the Jefferson Avenue Bridge between West 3rd Street and the Cuyahoga River. Authorizing the director of capital projects to enter into agreements and to apply for and accept an allocation of county motor vehicle license tax funds. Ordinance 678, 2020, by council members McCormack, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly, by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the director of capital projects to issue a permit to Electric Gardens LLC to encroach into the public right-of-way of West 4th Street by installing, using, and maintaining streetscape and landscape improvements. Ordinance 694, 2020, by council members McCormack, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly, by departmental request. An emergency ordinance to vacate a portion of West 37th Place and West 36th Street. Ordinance 695, 2020, by council members Mooney, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly, by departmental request. An emergency ordinance to vacate a portion of the first unnamed alley west of Bel Air Road and north of Guardian Boulevard. Ordinance 696, 2020, by council members McCormack, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly, by departmental request. An emergency ordinance to vacate a portion of King Court Southwest and West 31st Street. Ordinance 701, 2020, by council members McCormack, Johnson, and Kelly, by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the director of public works to renew a lease agreement with the Cleveland Browns Stadium Company for the lease of a limited access parking lot located on the south side of First Energy Stadium for a term of 1 year with 4 one-year options to renew exercisable by the director of public works. Ordinance 731, 2020, by council members Zone, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly, by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the director of capital projects and/or city planning to enter into 1 or more contracts with Stephen Gutierrez for the professional services necessary for the design, production, and installation of a yet-to-be-designed public artwork associated with and installed at the new Cleveland Kennel. Ordinance 734, 2020, by council members Kelly and McCormack. An emergency ordinance authorizing the director of public works to enter into a second amendment to the June 30th, 2016 property operations and programming agreement with the Group Plan Commission for Public Square to provide a restricted contribution to the support of the commission's maintenance obligations on Public Square. Ordinance 759, 2020 by Council Members Johnson and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Works to execute deeds of easement, granting to the East Ohio Gas Company certain easement rights and property located at Shaker Boulevard and Warrensville Center Road in the city of Shaker Heights, and declaring that the easement rights granted are not needed for public use. Ordinance 786, 2020 by Councilmember Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance on behalf of Cleveland Municipal Court to apply for, accept, and expend grants and gifts that become available from federal, state, or other public entities and private entities to respond to and mitigate the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, including funds to reimburse the court for costs incurred as a result of COVID-19, and authorizing the director to file and execute all agreements and documents necessary for these purposes.
Read the motion to suspend the rules.
By Councilmember Bishop, that the rules be suspended and the legislation just read be placed on final passage. Seconded by Councilmember Griffin.
Please call the roll.
Kelly, Bishop, Brancatelli, Cleveland, Conwell, Griffin, Hairston, Johnson, Bashir Jones, Joe Jones, Casey, McCormack, Mooney, Polensek, Santana, Slight, Zone. 13 yeas.
Please call the roll on passage.
Kelly, Bishop, Brancatelli, Cleveland, Conwell, Griffin, Hairston, Johnson, Bashir Jones, Joe Jones, McCormack, Mooney, Polensek, Santana, Slight, Zone. On ordinance 786, 2020, 11 yeas, 2 nays. On all others, 13 yeas, 0 nays.
Before we move to the next item, Councilman Casey, did you have a comment? I'm sorry, I missed your hand.
No, it was recorded correctly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So everybody straight? Okay, please give me the numbers again.
On ordinance 786, 2020, 11 yeas, 2 nays. On all others, 13 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please excuse the absences.
By Councilmember Bishop, that the absence of Council Members Cleveland and Slight are hereby excused. Seconded by Councilmember Griffin.
Thank you. This council is adjourned to the call of the chair. The next meeting of council will be Wednesday, November 4th, 2020. It is the day after the election, but if we were to change our, if we were to bump a week out, we would have to have a meeting, put us the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and that would cause an equal amount of problems. So we are scheduled for November 4th, 2020 at the same time, 10 o'clock for committee of the whole, committee meeting following immediately thereafter. Councilman Brancatelli?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't want to let this meeting go without acknowledging one of our long-term employees, Greg Esbert, who was in engineering and survey and did a lot of great work for a lot of years, and was just a wonderful asset to our city and really helped a lot of us as we were navigating on where our legal boundaries are and where our streets are, et cetera. Just a great employee. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, we are adjourned. Everybody stay healthy and take care of families and enjoy. Take care.